What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name is Stephen Wright, joined by Mr. William Monroe. Will, how you doing?
Steve, I'm doing well. We have finally made it to week one of the NFL. All the drafts here in the books, and we have just about 48 hours here from when we're recording until we have the first NFL kickoff.
Yeah, big times. A fun transition for us. We move out of mock drafts and into waivers and start-sit trade stuff. So that's always a fun transition. You do so many mocks. It's fun to do something different for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if you're new to the show, every Tuesday morning we'll have a waiver show coming out where we'll touch on waivers for what is it? Well, we do all the main positions, right? Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end.
Yeah, and maybe sometimes we throw in some like streaming defense options.
Right. We talk,
but I think it's usually those main ones.
That's true. Yeah, we talk to streamers as
well.
Like
if there's like a defense that is just clearly a great option to bring up.
Yep, and then on Thursday morning, the start sit show comes out. So we will do start sits. Usually about 10 questions in total. Quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and then a tight end / flex / defense kind of section, as well as doing some dynasty and redraft trades, which is what we're doing today. So if you have your start sit questions or trade questions, hit us up on at Trust Your Board on Twitter, and we can plug them into the show best we can. DM or just tag us in your tweet. So before we jump in, Will, we had our draft on Friday. Sure, people are somewhat curious. What did you? What's your starting lineup look like, and what did you think of the draft?
Yeah, I think it was a good draft as always. 12-teamers are always a little more difficult. I think somehow I feel like I usually prefer 12-team, but I've definitely trended to have more 10-team leagues than 12-team leagues outside of like the dynasty leagues that we're in. So this is one of the few redraft 12-team leagues that I have, and definitely proves to be a little bit more difficult. I think people don't like their teams as much. Got off to a pretty good start. Ended up getting a couple guys I don't love, but the value was there. So looking at Russell Wilson as my quarterback, Darren Waller as my tight end, Broncos defense, and then we've got Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Raheem Mostert, Tyler Algier, Jamal Williams, and Ty Davis-Price for running back, CeeDee Lamb, Michael Pittman, Mari Cooper, Devonta Smith, and Devonta Parker at the receiver position.
Yeah, for me, I drafted out of the 11 spot. And ended up going I don't want to call it 0 RB because I grabbed a running back in the 5th round, I think. But definitely waited on running back, which is terrifying. But I do like the team. I also drafted DeAndre Hopkins, which I don't think I ever did in any mocks that we ever did. But it felt like given that I went wide receiver heavy early, that I could take the shot on him. So we're looking at Trey Lance at quarterback. We're looking at Kyle Pitts at tight end. Back of the 3rd round, pretty good value on Pitts, and Andrews went back of the 3rd too. So quite good value on those 2 tight ends there for me and whoever else got them. Running backs, we ended up with Kareem Hunt, Chase Edmonds, Darrell Henderson, J.D. McKissick, Khalil Herbert, and Jeff Wilson. So for a late approach, pretty happy with that. And then wide receivers, we got Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, D-Hop, and then some younger players in Kadarius Toney and Garrett Wilson. With the Rams on defense, Brian McManus as a kicker. So we will see. I would have liked a depth wide receiver like a Robert Woods or a Marvin Jones, someone that is, proven that I know is going to catch the ball instead of my depth being largely just young player shots. But that's what the waiver wires forums who are somebody will emerge that I could take a shot on. But 0 RB, quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I kind of like that approach from a 0 RB standpoint. I actually took a little bit of a note out of your book there and ended up with a somewhat similar zero RB approach in my 10 team live draft that I did just a day after you had that one.
Yeah, it's solid. It was fun because right after you did your draft, I think there was reports of Chase Edmonds, possibly getting 30 touches a game and stuff like that. And it's like, hey, yeah, I like seeing that.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, I saw some hype of Pitts potentially being the tight end one, this kind of stuff. I was like, hey, keep this news flowing. I'm digging this.
Yeah, your phone must have heard who you drafted and started just pumping out all the news that adheres to you.
Yeah, for real. I was digging it. But yeah, that was our draft. Anything else you want to touch on before we jump into the start sick questions?
Just a reminder here, beginning of the year, especially if you have any new listeners here, when we get to the Thursday matchup here, make sure you get those guys in your starting lineup and out of the flex position. This one's going to be a pretty easy one for everyone to probably have those guys already in their starting lineup, but it just makes sense to have them in there so that you're not locking that flexibility of the flex position into a Thursday player. You move them up, even if it is moving Christian McCaffrey to your flex position and, one of Cam Akers into your starting lineup. It's no disrespect to CMC, but it just gives your team a little bit more flexibility.
Yeah, absolutely. We got some questions related to that Thursday game that we'll get to, probably 3 of them or something to that degree. So, yeah, we'll definitely be touching on that game. So good point, Will. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into it, starting with the quarterbacks as we traditionally do. We have we're scraping the bottom of the barrel to start here, Will. Baker Mayfield versus the Browns, that revenge game, or Trevor Lawrence at Washington. Who do you want?
Yeah, I do usually love a good revenge game. And I'll say at first I was going to say, Steve, you got a typo. Baker versus the Browns.
Oh,
we do
man.
that once in a while. But that one is no longer a typo. That is actually correct.
I know,
no longer on the Browns.
Yeah, it took me a moment because I was looking, when I looked up Baker, I actually looked for the Browns. And then luckily that's just how it worked out.
It's worked out.
So it's kind of hard, weird to look at.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, this one's Trevor Lawrence. Despite, going on the road, Washington had a really good defense last year, and I still think they're going to have a good defense, but they're going to be missing Chase Young, the top pick, to start the year, and they underwhelmed, I think, a little bit. I think they're going to take a step back a bit, so I like Trevor Lawrence taking that next step here in a second year, and I think the Browns defense is really good. Baker maybe has some insights on them, but they probably have some insights on him, so I don't know if there's really a big advantage either one has for being former teammates. I like overall Trevor Lawrence over Baker Mayfield, and that kind of is the slight edge there, despite the home field. Easier matchup, I think, in Washington's defense versus the Browns defense.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought too. Although I probably stick with the good revenge game narrative with Baker and just roll with Baker and see what happens. But all the points you said rushed through my head too. Baker's got the tougher matchup. I mean, Lawrence has got to go up against like Chase Young, and Washington's had a good defense the past few years, or not last year. They skipped a year in there somewhere. I forget which one, but
I mean, they've had good defense, especially with Chase Young.
Yeah,
just the new traffic, but yeah, I just don't think they're going to be as good this year as they have been in past years.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll stick with the revenge game narrative with Baker, but I have no problem with Lawrence. Well, I have a problem with Lawrence here, but straight up between the two of them, I have no problem with Lawrence.
This one maybe will be a little bit more difficult for you, Steve. Matt Stafford, one of our favorite quarterbacks going back for years here on Thursday against the Bills, or Derek Carr in L.A. And I believe that's a Sunday game.
Yeah, this one is quite difficult. Both of these games have shootout potential. Maybe more so the Raiders game because the Bills and the Rams both have really good defenses, and Chargers and Raiders are probably more closer to the middle. But both shootout potential. I think as much as it scares me to say it, I think I lean Carr. He's got the Sunday matchup, so a little more prep time. Not that that matters too much in week one, but still, Thursday games could be kind of weird. So Carr, he's got the shiny new weapon with Devontae Adams. I kind of want to see how that plays out. Meanwhile, Stafford on the flip side, there's a lot of this elbow stuff going on. I just want to see what happens week one. It is concerning that he took like a whole off season off, and it's still the problem just reemerged again as soon as he came back. So I just want to see a game out of Stafford first before I start trusting him, and then as long as he looks fine, everything will be fine moving forward. But for now, I'll stay away from the injury risk. I'll go with Carr. How about you?
Yeah, this one is really close for me as to, probably almost call it a toss-up. I think he's maybe more overall upside just because of the shootout potential you mentioned with Carr and the Chargers. But I do think despite both defenses being really good, you could see some fireworks on Thursday night. Everyone's juiced up here for the first game. But the Bills defense is pretty good. One thing you can say is it is a home game for LA versus a road game for Carr. But overall, I think probably lean with Derek Carr. Just here in week one, like you said, both players have some new weapons, Allen Robinson and Mr. Adams there. But yeah, I think I lean Derek Carr as well. It's tough to pass on Stafford, though.
Yeah, it definitely is. Next one, Will. Try to put your biases aside here. We got Jared Goff versus your Eagles, or Daniel Jones at Tennessee.
Yeah, don't love either of these. Hoping that this is a super flex question for somebody, because I definitely have both of these guys out of my top 12, probably beyond that into like the 20s. I'd lean Jones because of the matchup, and I think it's a new offense. So I think you could see some new wrinkles that a lot of teams maybe aren't familiar with, especially for this personnel. You've got Wan'Dale Robinson there, as well as Kadarius Toney. So still some dynamic weapons. Barkley should be healthy. So I think I'd lean that over Detroit's offense. You don't really have a lot of new options there. Jameson Williams, the big first-round pick, was injured, so he's not going to start the year. Amon-Ra's still going to be good. Hawkinson, you still have some decent weapons. I just don't love the full upside of Goff. So I'd lean Daniel Jones. Another tight one. Another one, as I mentioned, I'm hoping this is someone's super flex question, because do not think you're in good shape if you're deciding between these two here for your starting quarterback.
Yeah, this is an extra tough one because it's week one. Like, I feel like if it was week 8 and you had a better handle on where everyone was playing, I could make the case of, well, if you look at the matchups and think you're going to win comfortably, go with Goff, because he's not going to throw 4 interceptions and blow the game. Or if you look like you're the underdog, go with Daniel Jones because he has higher upside. As if projections aren't hard enough to rely on anyway. Weeks 1 through 3, and especially 1, you can't be relied on at all. So you're kind of stuck. But from what I've heard, Goff has had a good off season. I know they were liking him on Hard Knocks a little bit.
Yeah, I got the Hard Knocks boost.
Yeah, he does. He gets a little bit of boost there, but I'm with you. Daniel Jones represents more upside to me, more risk as well. But for now, week 1, when you really don't know anything, I'll take that shot on who I think has a better upside. So I'll go Daniel Jones.
All right, that wraps up the quarterbacks for us here. We're next going to move on to the running back position, Steve. First one here is full PPR. We've got Ramondre Stevenson in Miami, or Darrell Henderson on Thursday night at home versus the Bills.
Yeah, this one is interesting because you got 2 timeshares potentially. You don't know. Like they could both be 50-50 splits. Both of these guys could be the guy. Both of these could be, the second fiddle. You really don't know for either of them. Henderson, I think, has a tougher matchup. He's got the Thursday game. And given it's full PPR, Stevenson's been talked up a little bit for his pass catching. So I think I'll lean his way. Easier matchup. A team that probably wants to run more than they pass, which, could be the case for the Rams this year, depending on, Stafford's elbow. Remains to be seen. But I'll stick with Stevenson here. How about you?
Yeah, I think like you said, the pass catching probably leans a little more towards Stevenson, but Henderson, isn't a slouch. Part of me just I think it's pretty close. Both RB2s on their teams, both, still a little uncertainty on what the split's going to be between those top two. So either one, I think, could end up being the top running back, on the day for their team. And part of me wants to just go with that Thursday game, get it out of the way. You'll know what you have. But I do think just in a vacuum, I probably lean Stevenson here, as I think you'll probably get more touches in total with Stevenson, because I think they're going to run the ball a lot. We'll see how good Miami is, but we do know already how good the Bills are. So it's more likely that I guess it could be a close game either way, because both offenses there Thursday are supposed to be good. So it's tight. I wouldn't mind going Henderson on Thursday, but in a neutral site here, Stevenson probably be the pick.
Okay, next one's kind of fun. Half point PPR. We got Kareem Hunt at Carolina, and then we got Melvin Gordon at Seattle.
Yeah, this one is interesting. And where I think this is kind of common early on here is going with players that are the RB2 or expected RB2 on their teams. It's both teams on the road here. Kareem Hunt will get his carries, that. It's probably going to be maybe a 60-40 split there. And probably going to be a fairly close game. Whereas I think you could see the Denver Seattle game getting a little out of hand early, and you could see some more rushing attempts there at the end. So I think I lean Melvin in that aspect. Hunt maybe catches a few more passes, but Melvin's not bad at that either. So I lean Melvin just for the upside of them going up early, and maybe resting Javonte a little bit, as I think they want to use him for the length of the season, and maybe he can get a lot more work out of Melvin there in the second half. But another one that's pretty close between the two. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think the scoring format does hurt Hunt a little bit here. Instead of full PPR, it's half point, and he's that pass catching specialist. Like you said, Melvin can do it, but Hunt is there to catch passes. And I'm with you on the answer at the end of the day. I think I'm going Melvin Gordon. You would expect Denver to smash Seattle, and in a situation like that, you think you're probably relying on Gordon a fair bit. It is potentially the riskier play because we don't know what that split with him and Javonte is going to be. There's some talk of it being close to 50-50. There's some close to, 70-30. If it ends up 70-30 and, the game doesn't end up being, a squash, or it's just, Russ doing everything in a revenge fashion, it could be really bad for Gordon, where I don't see where it's going to be that bad for Hunt, unless Brissett just does not pass to the running back. So a riskier pick, but I'm with you. I'm taking Melvin Gordon as well.
All right. Wraps up the running back position for us here. We move now on to wide receiver. We've got full PPR, Juju Smith-Schuster at Arizona, or Devonta Smith at Detroit, both on the road.
Oh boy, I don't like this. I don't want to rely on a Juju or MVS week one. I'd really like to see what it looks like. But at the same time, Devonta Smith's been out a lot. You don't know what that the new look Eagles offense is going to look like. So it's tough. I probably would go Juju, I guess, because at least he has a shot at being the one for his team, where Devonta doesn't. But it's really close. And if you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different answer for you. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a clear upside and safety. I think Juju could be the clear number one, and maybe you get 10 targets. He scores a touchdown, and he looks like the top guy. But you also could have him, not be the top guy, and you have some of these other receivers step up. Whereas I think Devonta Smith's going to be the number 3 guy in targets on the team. Now, how much do they throw the ball? That's the question. But he's going to get his targets. I imagine maybe 5 to 6. Maybe you have 25 to 30 targets to pass around, and You're going to have A.J. Brown with the bulk of them, and then Goddard and Smith, I think, will be close on for second and third. So I think the safety play there is Devonta Smith. You know you're going to get the targets there, and I think 4 for 50 is a good baseline for him. If he gets in the end zone, great. Could get some more targets as well. Whereas Juju, you have the boom play. So I think it really is matchup dependent. I probably lean Smith just because of the uncertainty there with Juju, but if you think you need a bigger play out of that position, then I wouldn't mind going with Juju, but I'll lean Smith here on the safer option.
Speaking of big plays, PPR, Hollywood Brown versus the Chiefs or Allen Robinson versus the Bills.
Yeah, this one's pretty easy. I'm going with Hollywood. I think, and there's something to be said once again about that Thursday game. You'll know what you have with A-Rob there on the Thursday matchup, but I think Hollywood is going to be great in Arizona. He's the number one, at least for the first 6 weeks, and we'll see what happens after that. But I love the matchup there and what could be a pretty high scoring matchup between the Chiefs and the Cardinals. I think both. I think they probably tried to improve defenses. But I don't think either of them are top 10. So I think you have a better chance at being a high scoring game. And I think Juju and Kyler having that familiarity is going to be really helpful to get off to a good start. Whereas A-Rob, will likely see his targets, but a little bit probably slower of a growing connection between him and Stafford. When you already have the Breakfast Club going there with Cooper Kupp and Stafford, Kupp's going to get his. So I'll lean Hollywood pretty easily here.
Yeah, same. Both have shootout potential. Both are new teams, which is usually a red flag. Like as you said, it's kind of slow, and sometimes it takes a full year for them to get used to each other. But Hollywood and Kyler playing with each other back in college, I think, would help alleviate that. And there's just fewer other options with Hopkins out, where Allen Robinson's still got to compete with Kupp. Higbee being there, the running backs that Stafford's familiar with, and again, you have the whole elbow thing. So I'm with you. I'm sticking with Hollywood there.
Awesome. And our last receiver only choice, we've got half PPR Rashad Bateman at the Jets and Elijah Moore at home versus the Ravens. So head-to-head matchup there as well.
It is. It's head-to-head. It's kind of tough. I mean, unless Bateman takes that step forward, he's always had a solid floor. Well, not always. He kind of started falling off at the end of the year, but he had a good floor of getting 6 to 8 targets every game. Elijah Moore, probably more of the upside play. But you don't know what Flacco is going to be like. With all the injuries the Ravens defense had last year, they're going to be better. So I think I would lean Bateman regardless of whether you felt you needed a floor or upside. And maybe the upside's there for him this year. We don't know, but I'm sticking with him. I don't trust Flacco in the Jets yet.
Yeah, I am pretty in line with you there. I think it's Bateman pretty easily. It's just the better quarterback. Elijah Moore looks great, and I think there's going to be scenarios where you're confident starting him, especially here in the flex position, probably, but I would much rather go with Bateman. I think he's the clear number 2 target to what should be a very good offense, maybe not the highest passing volume offense, but offense is going to move the ball and score a lot. You're going to have him down there in the red zone. You're going to have him catching a lot of intermediate passes. Whereas Elijah Moore, I think you're going to get the targets, but you're going to need probably some big plays because I don't know that the Jets are going to be scoring a ton, especially against a pretty good Ravens defense. So that one, yeah, it's tough, but I'll go Bateman here just because I think the offense is going to be pretty good.
Solid. And like you said, that was our last a wide receiver. We got 2 flex questions. I'm glad you're answering this first one first, Will, because I don't like it. PPR, Drake London in his debut versus Saints, Breece Hall in his debut versus the Ravens, or MVS in his Chiefs debut at Arizona.
Yeah, a lot of new faces and some old faces in new places here. Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a flex question, and probably not one people are thrilled to play. But for me, I think a lot of people are going to be starting Breece Hall, whether it's RB2, like myself in the league where went with running back early, but didn't get running back till 5th or 6th round. So he's going to be starting a lot of leagues. Drake London as well, I'm sure, is going to be wide receiver 3 flex option, whereas MVS is more of a question mark. He's a guy like Juju that you're possibly going to start, possibly not. So he's the first one I crossed out pretty easily. Then it comes down to Breece Hall and Drake London. I probably lean London slightly. I feel like I usually like to go with the running back position, but the Ravens are going to be a pretty good offense, or pretty good defense, and having the offense there, it could force the Jets into passing. That's why I think most people are going to pick the Ravens to win that game pretty easily. Whereas I think the Saints are probably going to be favored there, but I think that even if they do go up early, I think that only helps London's effort, with him and Pitts likely being the top passing options. But I think Atlanta could be better than people are giving them credit for. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but I think most people have them as like a bottom 5 or 10 team. And I think their ceiling is maybe being a little more middle of the pack, depending on how Mariota plays. So I'll take Drake London here in this first matchup.
If you would have asked me a few days ago, I think I would have agreed, but I think I've changed my mind. I'm with you. I'm off of MVS unless you want to take a moonshot. Like if you want somebody that's, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, it's MVS. But I'm crossing him off first. I did like London a lot because I figured, well, at the very least, he's definitely getting volume because he's one of like 2 pass catchers there. So he's got to get the volume. He could end up with Lattimore. That could be worrisome. Maybe Lattimore's on Pitts or just kind of moves around. Who knows? From an injury perspective, they're still like hopeful that he's going to play, but it's not anything that's like clear cut at this point, which is kind of worrisome. And then, really something you said, it was what changed my mind reading this question. And that's, Breece Hall against the Ravens, it could be kind of a blowout situation. And that just could lead to Breece Hall catching a lot of passes. And you have an older guy in Flacco that's going to be dumping the ball off. You think you're Phillip Rivers kind of deal where you're Eli Manning, very, very willing to dump the ball off. And if you're going to be dumping it off, imagine you're dumping it off to Breece Hall. He is the riskier play because, they could work him in, might just be Michael Carter's backfield where London.
Could be both of them.
Yeah, it could be both. Where London, again, because there's so few options. Like he has to get the ball, you would think. But I can see the game script being in Hall's favor, despite being, the running back. And with the London injury, it's just got me kind of iffy. So I think I'm going to go with Hall, but I have no problem with London. Again, I've swapped stances, but it doesn't mean I dislike London.
Yeah. It's definitely a tough one. I think Hall and London is pretty neck and neck. I will say I'm in a few leagues here, and I am starting Hall as my RB2 in one league, and London is my wide receiver 3 in another. So definitely will be playing them, and then I'm not playing MVS anywhere. Don't know that I have MVS many places, but I'm not playing him anywhere. So money where my mouth is with Hall and London for sure. Our last flex question here, though, we've got half PPR, Gabe Davis at the Rams on Thursday, Dameon Pierce, everyone's darling here in fantasy draft season, versus the Colts, or AJ Dillon at Minnesota.
This one's pretty easy for me, I think. I'm crossing Pierce off first, and while it's known that he's a starter, I do want to see what he can do before I rely on him. Like you said, fantasy darling, but ask the people who started Darwin Thompson on the Chiefs a few years ago in his first game after his hype off season, and see how they, did week 1. So I'd rather see it a week.
You got to see it.
Yeah, for real. So, I'd like to see it a week first in Pierce. So then it comes down to Gabe and Dillon. In an absolute vacuum, I'm going to take AJ Dillon, for the safety, but he should still get plenty of work and has decent upside. But if you want to take a shot on sky high upside, obviously it's Gabe Davis, 100 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like he could do a lot. But I'd rather, for week 1, let's go with Dillon, and then we'll see what Gabe's role in the offense is.
Yeah, I'm in line with you where there. I think, overall it's pretty close on paper for all of them, but I like to see it with Pierce first, as you mentioned. So I think it definitely is something that, he could come out and look like the guy we were all drafting. But you could see Rex Burkhead worked in, a couple of the other guys worked in, and the Colts defense is pretty good. I think a lot of people are drafting them as maybe a top five-ish, top 10 defense. You'll see a lot of people draft them and want to start them here for the first couple of matchups they have this year. So I think that makes sense to me. Trying to get, he would be the first one that I would move on from. And I think for me, the big one would be Gabe Davis. I think he's the start here, especially here on Monday. I'm sorry, on Thursday for like the first game of the year. I think you're gonna see that offense move the ball. Will likely have Ramsey sticking Diggs, so you could see that open up a lot for Davis. Dylan, I definitely like to play there as well. I think we're going to see both of them as the likely guys that will be used, but I think you have a better option of having Gabe Davis be the guy that can get some big plays there. So yeah, I'll take Gabe Davis.
Okay, and moving into the trade portion, we got two dynasty questions here to start. Will 10-team PPR straight up Breece Hall or AJ Brown?
Yeah, interesting to see. I think overall value wise, you got to take Breece Hall. You got to think the 101. AJ Brown probably doesn't get you the 101 pre-draft. And even after the Hall went to the Bills, he was the consensus 101. AJ Brown probably doesn't get you the 101 straight up. I mean, maybe he does, but I think it's not easy kind of layup. So I'll take Breece Hall, but it's definitely close. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's pretty even. I would lean Hall as well, just positional scarcity with the running backs. But if you want to say, well, I got a proven thing in AJ Brown and an unproven thing in Breece Hall, so I'm going to go with Brown. I mean, I'd be okay with that. It's close enough to where I'd be fine with that.
All right. So next up here, another dynasty trade. We've got PPR and a half point per carry, so slight difference there. We've got Zeke or Juju Smith-Schuster and a 23 second.
Yes, another one. I think it's relatively even. But given it's point per carry, provided I'm a contender, I think I'd go with Zeke. Just because, regardless of how good he's going to be, he should get plenty of carries and plenty of volume. And that's going to be big in a point per carry league. Where Juju, could be great, but still roll the dice. The second, is a good add-on. Swap Juju with somebody more reliable and known, and we'd be, having a different discussion. But for now, I'll stick with Zeke there. What about you?
Yeah, I'm in line with you there. I mean, it really comes down to what you think about Zeke. But even if I think you're down on Zeke and you think he's done, I think there's somebody out there that's going to give you more than a second in 23. Maybe it's 2 seconds. Maybe it's a second and a better player. Juju doesn't do a ton for me. I know that there's upside there. If you're really high on Juju and really down on Zeke, maybe. But I think for me, I gotta kind of. It takes a little while for me to kind of come to that decision. So I'll take Zeke. I think pretty easily on my end.
Okay, moving into the world of redraft, a 10-team half PPR. David Montgomery and Antonio Gibson, or Nick Chubb and Adam Thielen.
I think I take Chubb and Thielen here fairly easily. I like Chubb the best out of everyone. I think Gibson's got a little bit of a boost here with the injury to Brian Robinson, but I do think, when obviously we have to see if he'll be fully healthy, but I do think if Brian Robinson get healthy, that's going to be a muddy backfield that I don't want a part of. So I think I like Thielen over Gibson. I do think Thielen's going to be solid. And I do think that, Chubb is pretty handily ahead of Montgomery. So I will, I'll take Nick Chubb and Thielen pretty easily. What about you?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'll take Chubb as the best player here. If you want to say Chubb and Montgomery. I was going to say, if you want to say Chubb and Montgomery is a wash, I'd be okay with, but that's not really true. Like, it's really Chubb. But if you just wash those two out, like, I'd still take Thielen over Gibson. I just don't know what to make of Gibson. He has a path now to being the one, where it seemed like he was losing that job. We don't know for how long. But even now, like, it doesn't seem like the team trusts him at all. Like, so I don't know what they're going to do with him. Like, I don't think McKissick's a guy where they're going to, he's a great pass catcher, but could they give him the first and second down work because they don't trust Gibson? I wouldn't think so, but man, how do you demote a dude to, kick off and punts and then bring him back up as the one? And like, I don't know. That's a scary situation and I don't want any part of it. So I'm with you. I'll take Chubb and Thielen.
Chubb and Thielen it is. All right. So 2 more redraft questions here for week 1. Got PPR, Dameon Pierce, and Drake London, or Leonard Fournette.
This is pretty easily Fournette for me. Sole dude in the backfield there. Should be catching tons of passes. Pierce could be good. Again, fantasy darling. Like, the situation's there where he could be good, but it's a roll of the dice. And London, he could have a fine season, but I wouldn't expect a Jefferson or Chase-like season from him, which is what you would probably need to make this an even trade for me. So I'm going Fournette.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not the biggest Fournette fan, especially like draft when you're coming to the draft and guys around him. But Pierce and London aren't guys that are around him. I get you're getting 2, middle of the draft guys for, let's say, a second round pick and a waiver claim. I'd rather have the top guy. Usually that's the case in a 2-for-1 deal because it's not necessarily 2-for-1. You're also getting, a Marvin Jones or, a Eno Benjamin. You're getting to pick somebody up off the waivers as well as Fournette. So that's going to be the case here for me, Leonard Fournette, pretty easily.
Perfect. And our final question of the episode, PPR, Christian McCaffrey or Najee and Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah, I think, on first look, I think it was McCaffrey pretty easily. I think, as I think about it, it's definitely not a layup. I'll still go McCaffrey, especially because I think we're a little bit lower on Najee than most. He's fallen in a lot of drafts, and I think maybe the rest of public opinion has moved that direction as well. Amon-Ra's no slouch. I think it's, a good return, but I still, I'm really high on CMC. I think he is going to be in line to have a potential RB1 season. Do you think as long as he's not hurt, he'll be a top 5 RB? Whereas Najee could be there, but I think you're probably looking at more of a back end RB1, with the offense. And Amon-Ra's good, but just not enough to make me pass on CMC.
Yeah, agreed. I don't mind downgrading CMC to Najee to get an extra piece, but Amon-Ra's not good enough of a piece for me to pull the trigger. I am expecting a pretty good year from him, but you do need to keep in mind he blew up last year when there were no other options. And they've gotten healthier this year, so maybe he doesn't step up like you think he would, or maybe Jameson comes in at some point and starts stealing some work from him. So yeah, I'm with you. I will take CMC, swap Amon-Ra with someone else, and we can talk. But for now, stick with CMC.
Perfect. So that wraps us up here for the first start, sit, and trade question show of the year. Keep an eye out early next week for the waiver show on Tuesday and another one of these shows on Thursday. And make sure you send over some of your start, sit questions for next week to us. Looking to get some ones from people who are going to be listening here and then make sure we can make it as effective as it can for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. So enjoy week 1 of football here, and always remember, trust your board.